What's good, YouTube? I've been getting a lot of questions about the cloud certifications, how to get jobs in the cloud. What do I think about the cloud? Is the cloud a good career path? And I have my own opinions, but I'm no expert. But I know someone that is very knowledgeable about that area. They focus on helping people get jobs in that career space. They've been doing this for a few years now, and they're very knowledgeable. Today, I have James Taylor here, who is a cloud and DevOps recruiter at TEKsystems. I've known James, for about 4 years. I think it was like 4 years ago when I met James. He's a certified AWS business professional, and he really puts in a lot of work to understand this space and to really get people in the positions that they desire. With no further ado, what's good, James?
What's going on, man? How you been?
Man, I've been good. How about you, man?
Good, good. Just working, obviously 2021's here, so excited to start the new year off, new goals, and, excited to talk with you today and kind of speak with everybody else.
Yes, man. I thank you for taking time out your day to come on and share your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to speaking with everybody.
Yes, sir. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in. If you could do me a favor, if you could like this video and share it out on your social medias, that would be much appreciated. Now, today, we're going to talk about the cloud. I got an idea of what it is, but James, could you kind of break down what the cloud is and how it pertains to people that want to enter the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the cloud is kind of the new robust engine within everything at this point, right? A lot of customers are going on a strategy on how to get to the cloud, but cloud is basically an on IT demand platform where customers are using different types of services to build different solutions, but ultimately like using it for high availability and the opportunity to scale at a rate we've never seen before. Obviously in the past working on in the data center, things like that, it's been a little more hectic and more costly to be able to scale, but now in the cloud you're able to scale at the push of a button, being able to tear down different services immediately, but also be able to build them up as fast as possible. I think that's probably the biggest thing, but companies are really scaling right now, very at a very fast pace, and are utilizing it in every business unit they have to help build and deploy bigger and better features for other applications, and utilize it to make sure that things are all available to the world, obviously, and being able to use it for other different reasons specifically.
Thanks, man. For everyone that's just tuning in, I mentioned that James is a recruiter at TEKsystems. His contact information is in the description of this video. Feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn. Now, James, when we talk about TEKsystems, could you kind of break down what TEKsystems is and what they focus on?
Yeah, so we're an IT services company. A lot of what we focus on is market opportunities. So working with large, Fortune 500 companies down to maybe Fortune 100 companies on just, working with them on identifying just some gaps and understanding their business as a whole and how we can help step in and help give them IT professionals, such like yourself, or in DevOps cloud or in any specific technology space, and help them find individuals that can come in and help them achieve a lot of their short-term or long-term goals within the IT space. We work with a lot of different companies in the healthcare space, the financial space. There's probably a lot of companies out there that you haven't heard of potentially that we probably work with. But basically, we focus on season market opportunity for a lot of IT professionals and kind of working with them to help identify career goals for them and helping them get into a spot where they can potentially grow in their career.
Thank you for that. Now, TEKsystems, which I got pretty good relationship with you, Brian Fellers, and a few others in your company. Now, for someone that's new to IT, how does one go about building a relationship with recruiters?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of recruiters in the industry. A lot of things we like to focus on is getting to know somebody on a personal level and a professional level, right? Obviously, you probably get a lot of phone calls and a lot of messages from a lot of recruiters, but the biggest thing is utilizing a recruiter is just like I would say is like a second pair of eyes in the market. Obviously, you can do a lot of your research on your own, things like that. But what we really focus on is helping people kind of grow in their next step by, working with customers, talking to maybe other people that are that are working in a specific space that they want to get into, and using that information to utilize to share with them to help them kind of grow specifically. So what I would say is it's just like another second pair of eyes for them to have. And we really focus on analytics as well, and a lot of data around moving, helping somebody by understanding, helping with, anything specifically around, maybe technologies they need to use, or understanding what companies are hiring, what companies are doing, what they're achieving. And that really, is a vast of what we try to do. That way, when people, we're working with have a good understanding of how we can help them, right off the bat. Specifically, and not just waste anybody's time.
Right. So when someone's using LinkedIn to connect with you or another recruiter, what's the best way to go about doing that to build a relationship? For when you have those job postings that you remember my name.
Yep. So obviously, I always want to connect with a phone call. Get on the phone with somebody. Like I said, I think the most important thing is connecting with somebody on a personal level and also a professional level, right? I know when me and you first met 3 or 4 years ago, right? We connected on both levels, and it was a good opportunity. I knew pretty quick, you were somebody that I wanted to definitely keep talking to and understand. And work with on a daily basis. So when someone connects with me, I just want to get to know them, have a phone call with them, just understand where they're at and what the next step is for them. And that's what our job is here, just kind of help them figure out what they want to do and how we're going to get there specifically. So.
Nice. Okay. Kind of shifting gears to talk about the cloud. Now, when you talk about the cloud, there's 3 main service providers for the cloud. Is that true? Can you talk about which ones those are and your opinion on each one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have Amazon Web Services is obviously one of the most sought after cloud platforms. Then we have Microsoft side, which is Azure, and then we have GCP. If I was to stack rank the 3 based on what I see a lot of, I would say that Amazon would definitely be number 1. Obviously, they offer an enormous amount of different services and allow you to build a lot of scalable solutions specifically, and then obviously cost savings, right? The ability to build things at the click of a button, but also being able to tear a lot of things down and only pay for things as you use them. I think that's the biggest thing that Amazon has to offer specifically. And then you get into Microsoft where, I feel like they might have a little more around the compliance piece with things and things like that, specifically. And there are a lot of good with like financial companies, things like that, because of kind of the cloud security that they provide, and also the government piece of it well. So out of those 3, I would definitely say Amazon, Microsoft, and then GCP. I've seen quite a bit of GCP, but not nearly as much specifically around GCP. So I would definitely stack rank them, like I said, AWS, Microsoft, Azure, and GCP.
Okay, I can agree with that. You're actually, what is it, a certified AWS business professional? What is that?
Yes, yeah, it's understanding the 3 cloud platforms specifically. More, like I said, I'm more on the AWS side, but understanding just the fundamentals and principles around the cloud, and understanding how to utilize individuals that work for Amazon. From a standpoint, architects, business, technology professionals, and also just understanding the why we use the cloud specifically, and what services they may offer, where to start with the cloud, and how to maybe give an interpretation of why you should utilize it.
Okay. Now here's a question that I got from Victor Palenko. The question is, which specific certification for the cloud should you focus on? And thank you for that question.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would, there's a lot of certifications out there. I mean, a lot. But the ones I would focus on primarily, and the most popular is, Amazon Web Services Solutions Architect certification is very high in demand. The cool thing about it is, and people love it, and it definitely makes you feel great, is when you pass it, is you get kind of a logo to put on your resume in the top right corner, and if you don't have experience in DevOps or cloud, but you got certification, that gives you a good understanding that you understand the fundamentals and principles around the cloud. And they might, companies might kind of go through the resume, but doesn't mean they won't interview you, because obviously they see the certification logo and they see your aptitude is high for the cloud and you want to get into it. So I would probably focus on the AWS Solutions Architect certification. That's really big. And then, there's a systems administrator one as well that is, far less advanced, but it's a very good stepping point. And then there's the AWS Systems Developer certification as well, if you want to understand kind of the programming side of things and how to write code and things like that, but understand infrastructure, as a whole too.
Would the fundamental certification for like AWS, GCP, and Azure be a good certification to start with those?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say, I would tell you there's a lot of individuals that have the solutions architect certification just right out of the bat. Just go in, study, take it, and pass it on the first try. It's just a high level overview of AWS or the cloud itself, and what they provide and why to use it, and then just understanding tooling around it and how to utilize those tools.
Nice.
Yep.
Now we got right into the certification aspect, but what I want to ask you is, how do you actually get a job in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of avenues that you could go on this. If you're someone that's typically already in IT, right, that maybe is a sysadmin that's doing a lot of on-prem work at the time, and maybe a data center, being a Windows engineer, just supporting a lot of Windows environments, things like that. I would typically, if it was me talking to them, I would, ask them to, look into a lot of the certifications like we talked about, because obviously those are going to bring a lot of key points and things like that, and getting that certification, and just understanding, kind of what DevOps is first. A lot of people think it's a lot of technology, things like that, but it's actually more of a culture thing. It's, it's bridging the gap between, infrastructure and development, and how do we create a agile methodology that's going to be able to adapt and be able to deliver software a lot faster. So I tell every individual to understand, if you already understand the infrastructure part, that's great. Understand the programming side of things, and that will take you a long ways, especially with coding, because there's a lot of tools right now that require a lot of coding, such as like Terraform, Ansible playbooks, Chef cookbooks, Puppet, SaltStack, those specific tools. But I would tell them to educate, obviously the biggest thing would be educating yourself at first, and just kind of having an aptitude of learning. Because one thing I can tell you is, even if you haven't got into DevOps yet, but you're trying to, if you go into an interview and just have a good broad level understanding of DevOps, and show that you've been doing a lot of studying, educational course, things like that, that'll go a long ways, in your interview specifically. So I would tell everybody to, that once again, the DevOps, to start with the educational side of things. Sometimes you get lucky, and you know the right person at the right time, right? Someone might have a role open, and they might know your background and be able to invite you over to their company and put you into a role where they teach you the DevOps aspect of things. But I would tell someone, for the most part, is educate yourself on some courses, such as there's a company called Cloud Guru specifically. I would go through some of those courses with those individuals, and I've seen a lot of people come out that have been a police officer, and a year later is a full-fledged DevOps engineer, just because he did live courses on his own, did a lot of projects and things like that really put him in a good spot to understand DevOps. And then, he went interview for a company and landed the role specifically. So.
Nice. When it comes to, let's say, entering the field of the cloud, do you need to go to college? It's a tutorial. So I would call that, to some people, having an education, stuff like that is very important. I don't want to, kind of just, go off on not having a college degree is probably the best avenue. Some people like the educational side of things, to get a degree in computer engineering, things like that. But have I seen people that don't have a 4-year degree or went to college that are full-fledged DevOps engineers? Yeah, I have. And like I said, they put themselves through educational courses like Cloud Guru, that previously used to be Linux Academy, or they've went through Amazon specifically and took educational courses and got certified and things like that. Do I think you have to have a 4-year degree? No, but that's your choice. And if you want to get that computer engineering degree, or I definitely would do that if you wanted to. But it's definitely not necessary at all. Thanks for that, James.
Yep.
Is there such thing as an entry-level position with no experience in the cloud?
Um, You know, I would say there's definitely junior level DevOps engineers, and what I mean by that is they usually bring in individuals specifically that have an understanding of DevOps and maybe has worked for a company that is maybe not so far down the journey.
Right.
Maybe someone that's done a little more monitoring, right, but on the back end of everything once things are deployed to the cloud in production. But there are some junior DevOps engineers. Is it hard to come straight out of school or come straight out of not doing IT to junior DevOps? Those are probably far in between. But if you had an opportunity to do that, then I would definitely go after it. But I would say that those are tough to come by specifically. So
Nice, nice. I like that answer, but I kind of want to go deeper since you work um, as a recruiter. When it comes to entry level IT positions, I feel that a lot of those may be shifting away from that true entry level. Not you don't really need any skills to get in the job. Are you seeing that?
yeah, overall in the aspect of IT, correct. Yes, you don't really need any experience to do that. Like I said, I've seen individuals that have, I've seen a couple individuals that have actually that went through the educational courses of DevOps and then they went straight into a DevOps engineer role because they did a lot of live sessions and things like that in projects that they're able to build and on their own and put in their resume and things like that specifically. So I would say that, like I said, they are far in between. They are far in between sometimes. But if you have an aptitude and really love what you do and things like that, I've seen that go a long ways within DevOps, and see people get opportunities that they've actually never done any like DevOps work before.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Do you have some specific job titles that people could go after for cloud
Yeah.
roles?
One more time.
Do you have specific job titles that people can look for if they're looking for a cloud roles?
Yeah, there's DevOps engineers really big. Another one is called an SRE, which is a site reliability engineer, which people have sometimes want to understand what DevOps and the difference between a DevOps engineer and an SRE, where DevOps is more the automation side of things, where you're automating a lot of processes, where SRE is more like making sure those systems that are built and automated are very reliable and continuously running, and doing a lot of fixing things like that. So those are probably two of the main ones. Specifically, I've seen cloud systems engineer. That's a pretty good job title that I see a lot. Specifically, cloud engineer is another one. I'm trying to cloud platform engineer, cloud architect. So those are probably a lot, 4 or 5 of the individual titles that I would look into.
Okay. Um, when it comes to DevOps in the cloud, how important is it to know like Kubernetes or Docker?
Yeah, so obviously Kubernetes and Docker is like the big, right? The ability to isolate all your applications, right? To run on multiple platforms and be able to move them simultaneously across different, VMs, things like that. So it is really important. I know a lot of companies right now are trying to understand how to implement and build out their Kubernetes environment and build out Kubernetes clusters specifically. So, but I would say that if you can at least obtain a certification and understand the fundamentals around Kubernetes, that will go far. But if you can definitely have the opportunity to work on a Kubernetes, and work on Docker containers, things like platforms, stuff like that, I would definitely look into that and and definitely step into a role where I could do some of that stuff because that is a very high demand technology stack for sure.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
there a particular area like of the country where cloud roles are more popular, or um, with remote work, does it really matter?
Before the remote work, I would say like Silicon Valley, obviously, more of your California, East Coast, West Coast companies, a lot of big companies in those areas. Maybe some companies like down south in like the Texas area, things like that. There's a lot of companies out in those areas that do a lot of hiring for DevOps cloud engineers, and a lot of companies that are moving to the cloud and doing a lot of automation. And they build out such cool products and things like that. They want to implement all these tools and be able to have updated features and things like that specifically done at a rapid rate.
Great. Yeah. Um, I think the pandemic has really changed the way IT jobs are looked at and the roles that are available right now. And I think remote work may become more common. Are you seeing that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it has become that way and things like that. And obviously we've seen a lot of companies that have, if you're on Twitter or any type of social media, you've seen a lot of companies that have, said, hey, after the pandemic's over, we're fine with our employees being 100% remote specifically. And, since I've been here for the last, at TEKsystems for almost 5 years, I've seen, in the last, I would say, 9 months, a lot, 60 to 70% of DevOps engineer roles becoming fully remote.
Wow, man,
Yeah.
that's a big number right there.
Yeah, it is. It's a good thing though.
Right.
Right.
Here's a question. What's the talent level like when you're looking for these roles to fill? Is it common to find like SREs with the right skill set, or are some of these roles harder to fill?
It all depends. I can tell you it depends on the technology stack specifically. There's a lot of tools and technology stacks people are, companies are using out there differently. Some customers might be using a different config management tool. Some customers might be using a different infrastructure as a code tool, different platform, or a company might just be on the forefront in the journey of moving to a DevOps approach, right? So it all depends on kind of what the stack looks like specifically. In DevOps, a lot, if you're in that field already, you might not have worked with that tool before, but you probably have a good understanding with it that sometimes it might work out for you. There's a lot of customers that, I would say that are in Microsoft Azure that sometimes, even though, they're on a Windows, in a Windows environment, they might look at somebody that comes from a cloud, an AWS environment, specifically. And why is that? Because, the platforms are kind of, they're kind of the same. Obviously, they have different services, but the same concept, right? So I would say it all just depends on the technology stack specifically and what companies are hiring for can make it, kind of tough sometimes, but ultimately, I think, we try to really get a good understanding of what they're looking for and what they're trying to achieve and, find the best talent as possible.
With the way the industry is going, do you see more roles going towards the cloud in the future? And what I mean by that, do you see on-premise going away?
That's a good question. I would say on-premise for some customers probably won't go away. Obviously, you have your legacy systems, right? There's a lot of old data and file stuff like that. Some customers can't ever get rid of for specific reasons. So I would say that they'll probably mitigate a lot of that and keep what they can. And a lot of customers will be going to the cloud. I feel like, especially Fortune 500 companies, just for the opportunity to be able to scale at a faster pace and utilize what is in the cloud and be able to, and using different types of tools to be able to save a lot of downtime, but also being able to build and deploy software at a rate that, we've never seen before. And then then you start getting into like quantum and AI and machine learning, things like that specifically. But I would say that, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, I would say that based on what I've seen, 60 to 70% of all customers will be, of companies will be inside, some cloud platform.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For those of you that have been watching the live stream or just tuning in, we're here with James Taylor. He's a DevOps and cloud recruiter at TEKsystems. I've known James for about 4 years now, and he's really helped me throughout my career, and he's been putting in a lot of work to focus on helping people like you get into DevOps and cloud positions. If you all have questions, please let them drop them in the chat. I appreciate all the moderators for the work that you do. Shout out to Network Bruh. Shout out to Dale, my cousin, and everyone that's tuning in. We really appreciate you. And James, I thank you for taking time to answer these questions today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here's a question for my network engineers. Do you see network engineer positions not being as wanted, I would say, or not as common as they used to be? Or is it about the same since a lot of organizations are offloading to the cloud?
Yeah, so obviously, network engineering is a space that I've had opportunity to do some work in, things like that. Probably not as high as demand, I would say that, but obviously the network is definitely stepping up, and obviously you being a network engineer, things like that, you've seen the opportunity. Network automation is huge right now, right? A lot of Python, SD-WAN, things like that. Virtualizing networks, so VMware NSX has become very popular. Things of that nature. I would say specifically, the networking roles probably aren't as popular as the DevOps role specifically. But we do get them, see them from time to time and things like that, and they are becoming more around. Like I said, your core route and switch is very, obviously isn't going to go away, but being able to get into more network automation, and people are looking for network engineers that have a background in that type of skill set that can do Python, and you believe it or not, get into maybe some CI/CD stuff where you're building data pipelines and things of that nature, right, to be able to deliver features at a faster rate and very rapidly. So I see the positions are about the same that come out. I just see the transition from one to another, from more of just your Cisco route switch, firewall configurations, getting into, working in the GUI, things like that, to getting more into automation, right? And it's how do we deploy and build, networks at a faster rate, whether that's VLANs, LAN, WAN, working with all your modern tools and things like that are specific, like OSPF, BGP, things like that. So.
I like that answer. I like the fact that you brought up network automation. It's booming right now if you have the skill set, in my opinion.
Yep.
Now, how common do you see like AWS in the skill set of a network engineer?
I've seen a couple. Obviously, when you build a cloud platform environment, right, they use Terraform and, things like that. You always have to have some type of VPC, right, or some type of subnet and things like that routing to that infrastructure, right? So, typically it's more of a cloud security, like that in nature. It could be a job title or cloud, cloud network engineer. But you will see from time to time where looking for someone that gets a good understanding of, obviously core networking, but also has built out VPCs, subnets, things, IP address, things like that, specific to maybe environments that are built in the cloud for routing protocols specifically.
Thanks for that, James. I got a question from Latrice James. I think you kind of answered it. But what steps would you recommend someone take to get training if you're not good at learning on your own? So is there any type of resources that you can recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I recommended a cloud guru. I know obviously, learning can be tough sometimes in this field because there's a lot of projects, things like that. Like when you get stuck on maybe a config file, or you get stuck on maybe deploying a service, or, you don't know where to look or what to do. And there's a lot of research involved. I know like Amazon, Cloud Guru, a lot of those companies, things like that, have educational instructors specifically that will work hand in hand, by email or phone call, right, when you're stuck on a project specifically. And that's what their job is. Another company is like Level Up One Tech, is a specific company where they're focused on working with you hand in hand, versus instead of giving you a project and saying complete this project, they work with you through the project majority of the time. That way, if you have any questions about maybe a specific tool or project, they're there to they're like one phone call away from. So
nice. With the way the industry is changing, what would you say the number one field is to get into right now? I know you're focused on cloud.
Cloud and DevOps.
Cloud and DevOps?
Yeah.
Wow. What about software development?
DevOps and is software development and infrastructure. It's just all about what side you come from. Obviously, your core Java development, .NET development, things like that isn't going away. The industry is very far. I would say if you're getting in software development, lean heavy towards microservices. That's very popular right now. The ability to piece together multiple different parts of an application and being able to run it is very popular right now. A lot of customers that specifically. But if you're a software engineer, I would get into microservices. But I would say cloud and DevOps. You're going to get the opportunity to do both, because you're going to learn how to do programming, but you're also going to learn how to build and deploy infrastructure at a very fast rate.
Nice. When it comes to your resume, how should your resume be tailored? And what I mean by that is, for someone that's focused on the cloud and they don't have any experience, or they're crossing over, what should they have on their resume to validate the skills that they have?
Absolutely. So yeah, obviously GitHub, GitHub's a big version control tool that a lot of companies use. I've seen a lot of individuals just complete projects, do a lot of projects on their own or through a company, and they complete those projects and they put them on there and they use them. Create a link where they share with the customer. The customer can go on there, pull up the link, and just understand maybe some line of code that they've written to do a specific task, or maybe build something specifically to do something outside of that. But I would say that GitHub, I would learn how that tool works and be able to build projects, things like that, and attach that to your resume. That's one thing that I've seen a lot of, and that's even if you are maybe just an on-prem engineer or developer or someone that has no IT experience at all.
I think a lot of people on my channel don't understand the power of GitHub, and I think that could be partly my fault. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it can help not only those that are looking to get in DevOps, but network engineers that are learning Python and network automation. So here's my question when it comes to your GitHub. Should you put that link to your GitHub on your resume?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, yeah, absolutely. Just the opportunity to look at it, immediately, have them look at projects. So that's actually what's probably going to grab their attention.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What about branding when it comes to like your LinkedIn or your blog or your YouTube or whatever platforms that you're using to show your knowledge? Should that be on your resume, and do recruiters and companies look at that?
Absolutely, and I would always say, when always add your LinkedIn profile, and any certification that you get, I would always put those certifications on your LinkedIn profile. Down at the bottom where you can put certifications, I would go on there and put which one you have. Obviously, it asks me when it expires and things like that, but I would always put that in there. And then talking about like just big projects that you've achieved, if you're in IT trying to get into the next big thing, what have you done for the customer or the company you're working for? What have what was the upside of that? Overall, like what was the performance of that project, how did it end, things like that. That's branding is going to be really big when it comes to getting your resume in front of the customer and just showing them kind of like your aptitude around things that you've done on your own or with a customer that's going to want to bring you in to at least talk with them.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, James. I got a question from WW, and I think you kind of touched on this, but the question is, what are the most in-demand networking skills and certifications potential employers are looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say network engineering. Obviously, your core route and switch is going to be super important, right? Firewalls. Obviously, firewalls are kind of like same concept, right? Just the way the rules are written, or Palo Alto, ASAs, FortiGate. And, any type of those firewalls are all kind of the same. They just, the way you write the rules are different, right? So, but I would say, that those are kind of the core skills specifically. And then, what's big now, like I mentioned earlier, is network automation. Python is huge right now, and the ability to be able to write a lot of scripts in Python and programs, things like that, to be able to automate network tasks is extremely popular right now, and we're seeing a lot of that, and I think that's going to continue to go up, and customers are going to start using other tools outside of that, more config management tools, I think, down the road, stuff like that, to be able to complete these tasks. And then certifications, I would say, CCIE is a pretty big certification. Obviously, CCNA is going to be more of your entry level, and if you can obtain a CISSP as well, that's it's more on the security side of things, things like that. But it's going to give you a better broad focus within that space.
What about the Security Plus?
Security Plus is a good certification. I would say specifically so. But there's some customers that that rely on that certification, and there's some that don't. But was it a nice to have? Yeah, but is it a must outside of the other ones? Probably not.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to, I wanted to ask you about ICE, Cisco ICE. Is that a big tool that you're seeing for network engineers?
I've the 5 years that I've been here, probably I've seen that, I think, once.
Oh, wow.
Right, and I would say the challenge there with was just getting it off the ground, implementing it, finding someone that had a good understanding of it. But that's not a tool that I'm like, I would say I'm super familiar with, but have a good concept around it. But like I said, I've been here for almost 5 years, and I've seen it probably once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got another a question in the chat, and this is a good question from Ashish Bahat, and the question is, can you get into DevOps without coding knowledge?
Absolutely. Obviously a lot of the tools when we talk about infrastructure as code, we talk about config management, right? The tools are kind of the same. One is just more of I'm more of an agnostic tool. One's more of a configuration management tool. But both of them require, if require coding specifically. But a lot of individuals will come from a bare metal systems administrator working on prem to a cloud environment without any coding knowledge specifically. But I would recommend maybe attaching yourself to a developer, just understanding maybe a couple days a week, understanding what they do, and maybe getting into that, because a lot of the tools and technologies that are being used these days are written in multiple different files. So Ansible is written in YAML, and you have Terraform, specifically that's written in its own language, right? CloudFormation, those specific tools, and you'll learn to write a lot of playbooks to be able to deliver, deploy software, change configuration files, or even, do patches, things like that across a large enterprise environment. Terraform, where you'll write a lot of scripts and modules and templates, things like that, to be able to build an entire system from scratch, utilizing cloud services or specific to what you're trying to do.
Since you brought up Terraform, that made me think of something. When it comes to software development languages, which one would you say is the most common? I know when it comes to Terraform, that's written in Go. How common is Golang versus Python?
Yeah, every customer utilizes the different language. I would say I definitely see, if I was the stack rank, I would say Python versus Golang is what I see a lot more of. Python's a pretty easy tool to use, and it goes hand in hand with a lot of different things. You can do programming with it, you can do scripting with it. It's actually, if I would advise like a stack to use if you're starting in the DevOps field, and the stack I would advise with understanding Linux OS, AWS, and Python, because those three stacks there will create a very good infrastructure just by themselves, and they're very easy tools to use. And if you have an understanding of those, you'll go far.
I like that. So Linux, AWS, and Python. Now, when it comes to, let's say, configuration management, would you say Ansible, Terraform, or another tool?
Yeah. So I would say Ansible is probably the most popular one that I see a lot of. Obviously the ability to write playbooks and some of the features it has to do a lot of things. I would say Ansible is very popular. But Chef, obviously has the compliance piece of things, being able to do a lot of compliance specifically. But I've seen a lot of people, that's what people like to use Chef. I've seen it used more on Microsoft than I have on more of the open source side of the house. But I would say that if I was to stack rank those three, I would say Ansible, Chef, and Puppet would be my top three. And then, sometimes some companies utilize SaltStack as well.
Nice. Man, you're dropping so much information, things that I didn't even know. Thank you.
Yeah.
When we talk about these tools that are out there, right? I think when you're putting this on a resume, and you mentioned your GitHub. Now, I've seen organizations use GitLab and all these other version controls. Is GitHub the one they should focus on?
Absolutely. I think GitHub is very important. It's a tremendous tool. It's, a lot of people, a lot of companies use things like that to be able to track all their projects, progress, things like that. There's nothing worse than, storing your project somewhere and you can't find it, where GitHub definitely won't give you that problem at all. And I've seen a lot, and I would say 99% of the individuals that I talk to, if they're software development or if they're in DevOps, they're cloud, they are using GitHub. That is their number one go-to when it comes to storing and working on a lot of projects, and making sure that all their code's in there, all their projects are tracked, things of that nature. So
here's a question from Jason, and this is something I always wanted to know. When you talk about the different certifications, how is the Network Plus viewed by employers?
Yeah. If you're getting into the networking side of things like that, Network Plus would be a good certification for someone that's maybe been like more of a network admin that's doing more administration, things like that. But if you're, as far as like Cisco routing and doing the core networking and doing a lot of implementations, maybe some architecture work, some more of the heavy side of the house things, I would, Network Plus probably isn't going to be something that's looked for. I would say there's some other certifications out there, maybe like a CCNP, this Certified Cisco Network Professional is going to be a degree I would definitely go after. But the Network Plus is a good certification, especially someone that maybe came off a NOC, more of a network operations center. But if you're more getting into more of the side of the house, maybe like you work on things like that, a CCNP would definitely be something that an employer would definitely would take in the credit. So,
all right, thanks, James. We got a few questions down here. I want to make sure that I get to some more. Thank you for everybody that's tuning in. We got James Taylor here. He's a cloud and DevOps IT recruiter for TEKsystems. He's been sharing a ton of knowledge. So if you're just tuning in, make sure you go back and watch this on replay, because if there's things that you wanted to know about the cloud, whether the certifications that you need, the job titles, the tools that you need to learn, James has shared all of that knowledge. Please check this out. Like this video and share it out. And hit James up on TEKsystems, let him know how much you appreciate this interview. Let's see. Here's a question from Jay Brown. And I think this is one that is a pretty good question. How many recruiters does an IT professional need to build a relationship with?
That's a good question. I would say, definitely, one with TEKsystems, right? That's going to be super important. But I mean, because obviously we like to, definitely utilize a lot of information we do to help professionals grow in their career, right? But obviously, I think the most important piece to answer that question is building a relationship with an individual that just understands you. Like I mentioned earlier, on a personal level and a professional level, right? Ask the right questions. And understanding maybe where you've come from, your career, right, and what's going to help you grow, and what's next, and what's the next, the next big thing for you specifically. If I'm in IT shoes and I understand what I know now, I would definitely say one or two. Work with and really get to know kind of what they and understand what they know about the market, right? If you're talking with someone that doesn't understand the terminology and understand what's going on and can explain kind of the tooling that they're using like that, it's kind of hard to understand if that role is going to be a right role for you, right? But I would say definitely one or two at a time, at a minimum.
Okay, great. Here's a question from Pat M, and I think this is interesting. And Pat said, I think certifications are no longer worth it. What recruiters value more is experience and skills, hands-on. Degrees and certs are just a waste of time. What are your thoughts on that?
I would definitely say that certifications are super important. We're talking with customers and just kind of understand kind of what they're looking for. I would, specifically certifications, DevOps is moving, every year there's something different, whether it's a tech stack or what a customer's trying to achieve. That show, certification, things like that show aptitude of you continuing to learn, right? I think the biggest thing in DevOps is people that have a high aptitude that want to get into the next big thing, and they're continuously learning. If you have a systems administrator, AWS certification, the fundamentals, the developer, and the solution architect on your resume, that shows that you understand the principles and fundamentals around the cloud, and you're putting yourself out there to keep gradually learning and growing, because this field's moving at a faster rate. And if you're not keeping yourself up to date with a lot of these courses and understanding what's next, then you'll fall behind pretty quick. So I would say certifications are extremely important, and obviously it's a good resume builder, but it also keeps you up to date constantly on what the trends are. So
that's a really good point. Now, when we talk about the vendor certifications, of course, we talked about AWS, Azure, and those certifications. But what about the tooling certifications like HashiCorp and all of these different certifications? How are those looked at on a resume for candidates?
Yeah, so HashiCorp, obviously Terraform is a tool that hasn't been around extremely long, and it's a tool that everybody's utilizing or from some degree, or eventually want to get into. And obviously, that course is going to teach you the fundamentals around Terraform, how to create and manage and provision infrastructure, and agnostically, right? Because that's what the tool is very agnostic, right? You can use it. It's not like CloudFormation where it's specific to AWS. Terraform is a tool that you can create and manage and provision all three cloud platforms work for. So AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud Platform, right? So getting that certification, things like that, as you're reading through things, you're constantly learning about, what that tool can do, how, maybe how companies are utilizing it, and different ways to be able to manipulate data or manipulate any type of, solution within the cloud specifically. And I've seen a lot of DevOps engineer have that HashiCorp certification, because some of them didn't even have experience with, using Terraform, and they got that. And then, when you go to your next interview and you sit down and, and they say, hey, give me a little bit of rundown of, if you use Terraform, no, I haven't, but this is what I know about it and understand about it, and this is why I want to use it.
Awesome. Yo, James, man, I don't want to keep you too long. I do thank you for taking time out your day to share your knowledge and to talk about how to get into the cloud. Is there anything you want to say to the audience before we go?
No, yeah, absolutely. I would like to say thank you to everybody for the opportunity to come in and listen to a little bit about some of the, the data and stuff like that we collect around the cloud, things like that. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing would be just, obviously just kind of, gradually just keep learning. Obviously, certifications are big. Just, understanding that the next big trend that's coming out, right? What technology stacks are big are big right now, what companies are doing, where companies are going, and just understand what you can do to help put you in that next step in your career, whether that's being an architect if you're more of an engineer right now and building out solutions, or if you're more of an admin where you want to get into more of the engineering side where you're building and deploying, versus like doing a lot of the monitoring side of things. I would just continue to learn and grow, because obviously that's going to be a big thing in the next 5 years. Technology is going to start ramping up even more and more, and you want to make sure you don't fall behind.
Awesome. Shout out to the moderators and everybody that's tuned in. You all have had some great questions. We're going to have to bring James back. We're going to have to do this again, because I know after I watch his playback, I'm going to have more questions, and I want to make sure that we hit those questions that you all have and that you all still have. So please do me a favor, like this video, and then as well, go to the description and connect with James on LinkedIn. You never know what opportunities are out there. Don't limit yourself by thinking that you aren't qualified. Keep learning, keep growing, and we thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
See you guys.
James.